last week.
Last week?
Yeah.
So what do you think of the neighborhood overall?
It's good so far.
Good so far?
I like it. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Everybody's friendly.
Everybody's friendly, right? What do you think of the history of this neighborhood?
I don't know much about it yet. I only know a little bit, but I haven't been able to explore very much.
I mean, have you done any research on Bedford Stuyvesant? I mean, you just moved here, as you stated. So did you do any research or background on the neighborhood before you moved here?
Not specifically.
Not specifically?
I've been in New York for a long time, so.
Okay.
A little bit, but
all right.
sure.
Because the reason I'm asking is because there are a lot of changes that are happening in the neighborhood cosmetically. And, I think the ultimate goal of any person in New York is to have a safe, affordable place to live. So I'm not necessarily making this a race-based issue, but what I'm saying is that this neighborhood does have a deep-rooted history and culture, and being a long-time resident, I just hope it stays that way. But that doesn't mean that I'm against integrating other people to come in the neighborhood, bringing the capital, bringing the finances, bringing the improvements that this neighborhood has needed for a long time. You understand? So from a political and a financial standpoint, having people integrate into Bed-Stuy, move in, it does help the neighborhood. It helps the neighborhood financially. It helps capital be invested into this neighborhood. But ultimately, I don't want to see people that look like myself get displaced. You understand? I'm a college graduate. I have a high-paying job, so I can afford to still live in the neighborhood. But a lot of people can't. You understand? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would like to learn more about the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how to be involved so that doesn't happen. I'm aware of the way that people moving all around Brooklyn kind of displaces the history all over Brooklyn.
Thank you. I mean, at the end of the day, you as an individual, you probably have a regular 9 to 5, and you want to get up and be able to go to work and live your life and have friends and have fun. I'm not necessarily pointing the finger at you, but I feel like there's a responsibility from anybody moving into any neighborhood to understand the culture and the history there, as well as integrating and being a part of it,
I think if more people that were moving around understood that, it would happen better.
It would.
Okay. I have roommates. We're not
yeah, I know.
Buildings or anything,
exactly.
And
I have roommates as well. So we're both in the same boat. I work a regular corporate job, 9 to 5 every day. So a lot of people that are moving into the neighborhood are in the same boat essentially as a lot of the people that are already living here. And like I said, my entire goal is not to just be like, oh, I don't want quote unquote white people moving in the neighborhood. It's gonna happen. Change is part of any neighborhood throughout. I just came from California. There's certain areas of Richmond and Oakland that are experiencing the same phenomenon. And like I said, it's going to happen. Change is inevitable anywhere you look at it. My whole goal is just to make sure that the history and the cultural roots of this neighborhood doesn't change or it's forgotten.
I think Bed-Stuy is a beautiful neighborhood, and from what I know, there's pretty rich history here. And it would be terrible to see that change.
Last week?
Yeah.
So what do you think of the neighborhood overall?
Good so far.
Good so far?
I like it. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Everybody's friendly.
Everybody's friendly, right? What do you think of the history of this neighborhood?
I don't know much about it yet. I only know a little bit, but
History matters. It matters not just because we can learn from the past, but because the present and future are connected to the past by the continuity of a society's institutions. A quote by Douglas North. I guess it is safe to say that based on the conversations I've had thus far with residents and members of the community during this journey, that there are many undermining and covert tactics utilized to approach and persuade black homeowners in Bed-Stuy to sell. It has also become clear that a select group of individuals, or as Ms. Linda and Lester candidly pointed out in part 1, the Jews, who are allegedly at the forefront of pressuring many black homeowners into selling their property. It also seems to be an element of deceptiveness, present in regard to how major banks, financial institutions, and insurance companies have dealt with and are continuing to deal with some of the remaining black homeowners in Bedford Stuyvesant. This was rather evident following the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. The subprime mortgage schemes and frauds perpetuated by major lending institutions have definitely played a huge role in the current state of the community. During that time frame, 25.2% of 770 subprime loans given on homes in this area were facing foreclosure. And ultimately, Bedford Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, experienced the largest amount of foreclosures related to that crisis, with Crown Heights placing second. That 25.2% represents 195 black-owned homes. Couple that with the fact that Bedford Stuyvesant has historically always had the highest concentration of black folks in the entire United States. Knowing the facts and having the information makes it hard to believe that there isn't some grand, monolithic conspiracy taking place from the highest levels of state and federal government in collaboration with insurance and financial institutions. Think that is impossible? Let me give you a small example. There was a recent fight a few years ago between Harlem and Columbia University over 19 acres of land it hoped to utilize for expansion of its campuses. Of course, eminent domain laws were applied, much like many residents and business owners around the newly built Barclays Center downtown Brooklyn have experienced. Ultimately, the Supreme Court allowed Columbia University to obtain this land. Lee C. Bollinger is the current president of the private Ivy League Columbia University, which is internationally renowned. He was also the president when this debate was happening. He also serves on the board of directors for one of the biggest and most powerful financial institutions in the world, the New York Federal Reserve Bank. He was also on the board of directors when the Supreme Court gifted Columbia University with the rights to this land. Now, I'm not saying Mr. Bollinger utilized insidious influence or perhaps connections with high-ranking officials and politicians within the city and state government to make this deal go through, but with the way things are happening as of late, one has to wonder if people in positions of power in business, finance, and the political arena are quietly implementing the same type of policies in Bed-Stuy and many other neighborhoods experiencing these changes. This is Bed-Stuy is Not Broken. Everything is for sale. Part 2.
What's happening in this neighborhood right now is really unfortunate because, again, all these changes, it took other people moving into this community to go ahead and bring about all these changes.
Yeah.
And we got to start asking the question, is these changes for us?
Yeah.
These changes for them?
Exactly.
To push us out.
Exactly.
You know, and the thing is, you got to think, why are we even in the vulnerable state for this to happen? You know, a lot of our children were not buying. A lot of our people who were living in these communities did not own.
Exactly.
People came in and bought up these properties. And even for the people who own in this community, they went ahead and didn't sell it to people that look like themselves.
Exactly.
They went ahead and sold it to whoever's going to give them the most money. Therefore, not leaving behind a legacy for the youth. So, you know, it's unfortunate it's happening in this neighborhood. Some of the changes are for the good. A lot of these changes, you got to ask again, is for us. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, here's my brother. I remember years ago, I had a friend, and she was actually from England. And I remember her coming to visit me, and at the time I actually lived in Park Slope.
Okay.
Now, when she came to visit me, we went around, I took her around all the Brooklyn. So we went to East New York, we went to Bedford Stuyvesant, we went to Brownsville, and basically every time that we went to one of the areas, it was basically a festive thing that was going on.
Yeah.
So, and then after we went to whatever activity we went to, then we came back to Park Slope. Now, Park Slope is pretty much a mixed area. So we have it's multicultural, so we have Asians, blacks, white, Japanese, it's a very mixed area.
Yeah.
And she pointed out something that I was totally oblivious to, because I had grown up in it all of my life and never even gave thought to it.
Okay.
She asked me when we were in Brownsville, when we were in Bedford Stuyvesant, why is New York City, or why is America so segregated?
Yeah.
Okay. She asked me why was it segregated. Now pause for a moment, because I didn't even realize that you know, coming from her perspective, because when you go to England, they don't have all black communities, they don't have all white communities, they don't have all Hispanic communities. If you go to Canada, you know, they don't have a ghetto, because ghetto is not a term that appeals to just black people. It means just basically it's one specific block of ethnic people.
Okay.
So it does not mean that it's poor people, X, Y, Z, or referred to a specific race. It refers to any block of one race of people.
So where everything happened in the neighborhood, do you think it's a completely positive thing? Just name some of the positive aspects, because you would agree that there are some positive aspects of gentrification, but at its core root, you know, is a significance. It signifies change.
Here's the thing. I remember seeing a documentary that was on PBS, and it actually had Ruby D, whom I love. God rest her soul. She actually narrated it. She actually narrated the documentary, and the documentary was actually about a town in New Jersey that essentially was all that. It was basically, right at one point it was like 70% black, and no, excuse me, it was 60% white and 40% black.
Okay.
And it was a thriving town. And then all of a sudden what happened was white people started to move out the area.
Okay.
And then you know what happened? The entire town went down. And the town went down not because they were bad people in resources, or because crime went up.
It affected them economically.
Well, the reason that it went down was because what happened was the federal government started pulling out the services that they extended to that town.
Okay.
Because the population of white that were there went below 50%.
Okay.
Now this is an unspoken and unsaid rule that they actually go by in America. So literally, I mean, take for example when you talk about gentrification being a good thing. See, I don't see gentrification as being a good thing, because a good thing would be for you to treat all people equally and extend services.
That's not the goal.
Exactly.
And extend services to people. Period.
Okay.
That's a good thing. Okay. Now, for somebody to sit down and say that these people own their homes. These people own. This is a residential area. There's no projects over here.
Exactly.
These are all brownstones. These are apartment buildings in brownstones, mostly brownstones. These people are homeowners.
Yeah.
How many Chase banks do you see when you walk down this block? Chase Bank is a first-party lender.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what they are. So you can tell how a neighborhood is doing economically by going into that neighborhood and seeing what banks are in that neighborhood.
Okay.
So you don't see a Chase Bank. The closest Chase Bank that you're going to find in this neighborhood is going to be further up Fulton Street, going all the way to the plaza.
Yeah. Now, I grew up on Decatur Street and Tompkins Avenue, and they just put a TD Bank on the corner of Marcy and Fulton.
Yeah, they did.
Right.
Yeah. You know, so. Is that an indicator?
That's not a first-party lender.
It's not a first-party lender.
When I say a first-party lender, I'm talking about people that give loans and lend money at prime rates.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, prime rates, first-party lenders. Chase Bank is a first-party lender. Fleet Bank, they're not it's not a trouble bank, but it's not on the same level as a JP Morgan.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, you know, so this is what I'm talking about. So, but getting back to the point I was talking about with Ruby D, is that the population of the white people fell below 50%, and so what happened was the federal government took the resources and the services that they extend to people that are basically services that everybody should get. Okay. They took those services away, and what happened was the way that they got back on track was they had a campaign. And the campaign that they had was to actually attract and lure white people back to the neighborhood. To lure white people back to the neighborhood and get them to actually purchase homes in the neighborhood again.
Yeah.
And so once they did it, and the population of the town went over at over 50% white people once again. All of the federal services came back. Okay. And they considered that to be a victory, but I didn't see that as a victory. That's a problem.
It's a misjustice in reality. It's a misjustice, and the reality of the situation is that, you know, there are a lot of changes happening in this neighborhood, and everyone sees it. But what do you think? You know, I mean, a lot of people say that there's actually no black community. You know, a lot of people have that community. You know, but at the end of the day, I think that's just something that's perpetuated by the media.
Again, I grew up in East Flatbush.
Yeah.
I didn't come in contact with white people unless I left East Flatbush growing up as a kid, and went to other areas. Even when I went to elementary school, high school, there's like one white kid.
Yeah.
That was it. Again, it was a Caribbean neighborhood, still Caribbean neighborhoods.
Yeah, but see,
there's a whole bunch of areas throughout America that's been that way.
Exactly. And thriving. Absolutely.
Thriving, like he said, other outside forces will come in and try to disband that neighborhood. Look at Black Wall Street. It's been going on.
Listen, I mean, you know, growing up in Bed-Stuy my entire life, the one thing that I've seen is that, you know what, I know a lot of people that were homeowners on the block that I grew up with, upper middle class, people that, you know, bought their homes in the 70s and the 80s. I'm sorry, even though, you know, I grew up in an apartment building. And, you know, the biggest thing that I see is that they're coming after these brownstones. I think that's the prize right there.
Well, that's what it is, because never again in American history will you be able to make a brownstone at that cheap a price.
Exactly.
The price of the brownstones are paid at. But if you try to build one a day, it would probably cost you about $10 million. Somewhere up around that amount just to build one now. So these guys are coming through here and they're snatching up. So they've done it in, they're doing it in Bedford Stuyvesant, they've done it in Bed-Stuy, they're doing it in Fort Green. You know, so it's just like one big, it's just like one big thing where they're just actually going for all these brownstones. And it's not just about the brownstones, it's also about location.
Location. It's prime location.
Proximity to the train, proximity to the city.
Listen, I work all the way in the Bronx, and I live right here on Jefferson Avenue, and I can literally get to the Bronx in an hour.
Right, exactly.
In an hour,
exactly.
You know, in an hour.
And not just an hour, but you have different options. You can do it by the A train. You can actually
do it by the
J.
You
can do it by the 4. You can do it
L.
Everything. There's a number of different ways that you can do it. So when they realize exactly what it is that they gave up, they eventually sit down and said to themselves, "Let's come back and get this."
And also economically, living out in the suburbs and moving out to those high areas, the cost of houses went up. The cost of gas went up, back and forth, and the Metro North, all the paths going to the city went up. And the same economic strife that we're facing, they're facing as well. So again, like I said, they want to move back, get closer to their jobs, get closer to the city.
I mean, I see
bike lanes, all these different things. They come in here, and then you gotta look at it. You know, the face of gentrification is young 20-something-year-old punks with no family. That's not it.
That's not it.
You know, you'd be surprised. A lot of middle class, a lot of young, older, middle-aged people who are moving to these areas, and also people who are coming from other countries.
Exactly.
A lot of foreigners.
Exactly. I mean, so what do you brothers see this community in the next 5 years or so? I mean, just
completely different, especially where we're standing right now. I mean, look, you got that building, that parking lot that's sold for $4 million. You have apartments that went up there.
That's where the laundromat was, right?
The laundromat was there just 2 years ago.
Wow.
And then they sold that lot for $4 million and threw that apartment up. That place is probably gonna be open in about the next week or so. You got another one on Monroe between Madison and Howard. Between Howard and Howard. You got all throughout. I'm even hearing stories that they talk about tearing down the projects on Patch.
Wow.
And it's towards Brooklyn. They talk about tearing those down and throwing up condominiums over. And this plan has been a plan in motion by the city of New York.
It's been up for over 30 years.
30 years it's been in motion. The Barclays, all this stuff was in motion, actually been put in motion.
Yeah.
But see, the biggest problem that I have with it, and why I don't see it as being a good thing at all, is simply because of the dislocation of people. You can't sit down and marginalize people and then just randomly dislocate them. I mean, with no sense of responsibility in regards to it. Right now, there's this huge debate in New York City when you look at these housing commissions about creating affordable units of housing. These guys over in East New York creating all these bioswales now, which is something that should have been in place like years ago, where you actually capture like rainwater and use it naturally, as opposed to actually, using up the resources that we have. We could also use additional resources that are free. And I mean, these are solar energy is another thing that should be pushed in terms of all these things. I mean, you got all these people that are homeowners. And you'd probably be really hard pressed to find one person that actually has a solar panel.
Exactly.
Built into their home.
So let me ask you a question. And I thank you gentlemen, for your time and answering the questions and having this dialogue with me. Do you think, black people because like I said, growing up, I knew a lot of black people that were homeowners. I knew a lot of people that actually sold their homes before the economic crisis in 2008 and 2009, and they went down to Georgia, to Conyers and areas like that with probably 10 times the value that they initially paid for the home. Do you feel like black people that are homeowners in Bed-Stuy have a responsibility to kind of maintain the legacy of black people in this neighborhood, because in the beginning, this neighborhood became what it was because white people moved out, and that
it's a responsibility that they have to themselves. I mean, listen, the first rule of equity is never walk away from it.
Yeah.
So if you spend your life going out here and you buy a home
and you pay it off,
and you pay that home off, regardless of the fact if you bought that home, let's say 50 years ago, and that home and the market value for that home when you purchased it was $10,000, or if it was $5,000 or $20,000. Here's the thing, and this is what cracks me up about these individuals that the market value rises and immediately what they do is they sell. Okay, you go out here and you sell this home, and now you think to yourself, you have this huge capital gain, but with capital gain comes a capital gain tax.
Exactly.
So if you're not,
and a lot of people don't understand the economic intricacies of selling and owning a home
and how it affects the community.
So if you get that capital gain tax, if you're not taking those monies and investing those monies back into purchasing another home, you're losing the lion's share of that money anyway. Now you're coming out ahead in terms of the original principle that you invested in the house originally, and so you are coming out ahead.
But you're
probably coming out over, let's say maybe about 200%.
Okay.
But what you actually got for the going rate was over 1,000%.
Exactly.
But you're losing all that money. So it's about being smart. It's about wealth building. It's about equity
and legacy, man.
Just
legacy.
You
got children too.
Legacy is wealth building.
Right. It's the same thing. So that's always asked the first question. I'm like, okay, so there was no children. A lot of people at my age, this one's my age group, and I'm 30-something years old.
Yeah.
My grandfather bought his house in East Flatbush in 1960. He bought the house for $30,000. Right? I lived in that same house as a kid growing up. I lived upstairs in a 3-family house.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I was raised there. So now that my grandfather moved on and he moved to England and Barbados, I turned around and he passed that house down to me.
Yeah. That's wealth. That's passing down wealth.
Family in that house, and it put me in a position, one, to not face the economic hardships. Face the market value rent that's going on throughout here, and also put me in a position to be able to go ahead and buy something else to pass on to my children.
Exactly.
And put it in there so they can come in and not with debt.
Exactly. With equity. Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So I always ask that question: what was the state of the home? Why you didn't have a child to pass this house on to, or even keep it and rent it out to those family members and keep it in the family? Because you sold it, you made a couple $1,000, a couple $100,000. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Especially look at the cost of living.
The cost of living. Exactly.
If you're a retiree, you get a pension. Your pension is probably about $3 or $4 grand. You go ahead and you have this. How long do you think you're gonna live off that? You don't got no health care. You ain't got food, eating, transportation, everything. It's gone.
It's gone.
All for what? You can't do it in New York City. What ends up happening is that they actually end up moving outside of New York City.
And then they do all of our hardship, let's say they help university, all these different resources. What ends up happening is now you see a lot of elders going back to work.
Yeah.
They're not going to make the same amount of money.
Exactly.
And then on top of that, you got to think about it too. You used to living in an area where you don't have to drive, you don't have to do all these different things. You're in the South. The South is a completely different beast. It is about what you know. It's about who you know.
Exactly.
Transportation is a beast. People of color throughout history always lived where there was transportation.
Exactly.
That's always. Lived inland, near the city, near downtown areas, there's transportation. That's how we always lived. Everywhere. You look in Georgia, you look in Baltimore, you look in Detroit, we always lived like this. St. Louis, Chicago.
So I mean, now you have the Great Migration in reverse now. So
and
people that were coming from below the Mason-Dixon line, they were coming to the north to populate and look for jobs. And now what's happening is you have the Great Migration going back to the south, because most of the people that you're hearing about, they're actually going down there and they're moving below the Mason-Dixon line. They're buying homes out there. They're trying to find jobs out there.
Which is tough.
And it's really something. I mean, because it's almost in a sense that what ends up happening is that black people just basically we do the grunt work where we go and we build up cities, and then we build it up to the point where market value is actually where it's inhabitable and becomes a viable city. And then what ends up happening is that people come in and to wherever it is that we lived at, and then they take over and they dislocate us again.
Yeah.
So
don't give two fucks about us, and we so bent on being equal, trying to assimilate. You know what I mean? That go with the people like Jay-Z and all these stars. They all want to be like them. They want to move in their circles, and it's a fact though. Economically, purchasing power, we wield the most per capita than anybody in this country. We've been mad bread, and we don't do it ourselves. We go to Thai restaurant, we go to this bodega here, we go shopping, we go to Macy's, we go to this mall, buy this European shit, Balenciaga, Giuseppe, it's European shit. You know, we look crazy. Wine on your feet. You look